Hello, welcome to Glasgow Rangers Nation with me, your host, Owen James, the channel that brings you your team every single day, guys. Please obviously smash that sub and like the video, guys. You know what? It's free. We don't charge you for any content. We don't charge you for watching videos. We don't hide our content on Patreon. We don't charge you £2, £4, whatever it is a month to access the content. So it's free. If you do want to support the channel, super thanks button down there, donate a bit, become a member, 99p. Right, look, financially, look. The financial situation at the club is not great. We know that. Look, we know that obviously the club is not in risk of going into receivership or going bust again, as it did in 2012. We know that the club is, being obviously held up by investor loans, etc., etc. We know that is all the case. We also are aware of the fact that massively financially, we are hugely behind Celtic in terms of the financial power that they have over the financial power that we have. Their financial power obviously divided from the fact that they have a trading model that clearly works when they're getting, huge transfer fees for the likes of Jota and the likes of O'Reilly. Not only that, but of course they have the guaranteed Champions League money. And with obviously that draw last night in Zagreb, they, are highly likely to progress to the knockout stages again, bringing in yet more money. Now, whilst the Europa League obviously brings in some cash, the amount of cash brought by the Europa League is dwarfed by the amount of money brought in by the Champions League. So, Rangers really do need to look at the financial situation. I mean, I think we can all agree, bar a few, deluded people, that this board needs to go. The Park family, who are a curse on this club, need to be swept away. That Douglas and his son, Buffet Boy, need to be pushed out of the club in some way. Now, the best way for that to happen, obviously, is a complete buyout by an external investor. I think in terms of that investment, that investment needs to be a complete takeover. I think bringing in an investor to work alongside the present board would not work due to the fact that the present board are galactically incompetent. They cannot organise anything. The way they run this business is an absolute shambles. I think if you took Douglas Park, Graham Park, and the rest of the board, John Gilligan, and the rest of them, Wolf Hart and all of them, and you put them into running a company, they would probably send it bust. If they ran it like they run Rangers. Now, Stefan Borson, who is a football finance expert, has been speaking about the situation. Now, for the last decade, the club have been losing money, and we've been requiring loans and external investors, like John Bennett, for example, to put in sums of money to keep the club going. John Bennett, obviously, Rangers are in hock to John Bennett to the tune of around about £11.9 million. No doubt we owed the Parks money as well. I'm sure Mr. Graham Parks had to cut back on his McDonald's order because of it. But the situation is, over this last decade, the figures are quite astounding, really. Hence the title of the video. This is taken from Rangers accounts over the last decade, and this is Stefan Borson, like I said, who is a football finance expert, has been looking at Rangers accounts, and he said that. He says, it's not unusual for Rangers to lose money, but he actually said it's not unusual for a football club to lose money. He says, but Rangers have been constantly making a loss for the last decade. In football terms, it's a relatively small amount. £100 million to you and me is an awful lot of money. To a football club, apparently, it is not a great deal. This is the situation. Rangers have lost 100 million in the last decade, 68 million in the 4 years up to 2021, and a further 22 million since 2021. So it appears that since 2021, there has been some cutting back in certain areas. So cutting back, obviously, on what is being spent on wages, transfer fees, etc., to pull that debt back into line. But the fact that we have lost over 100 million in the last decade is, absolutely shambolic from the board. It is shambolic from the way the club is run. Now, a lot of that money that has been lost, has been in terms of the fact that, we've not obviously been budgeted for Champions League, which we haven't got. We've made some very bad financial spending decisions. The outgoings obviously haven't matched the incomings. Players have been allowed to leave for nothing, therefore meaning that money can't be reinvested into the club. There's a whole plethora of reasons why we've lost £100 million. It's absolutely shambolic. It really genuinely is. Borson said the business is very difficult for Rangers from a financial perspective, save for seasons where they have interesting European success or involvement. Unfortunately, that's what it's become now for both Celtic and Rangers. They do well on match days with some of the highest match day revenues around. The UEFA money is now so important in the mix, and it can be completely transfer your PNL. Unfortunately, given the wage bill, they are running around 60 to 65 million. They just have to have a chunk of European revenue. Otherwise, they're going to lose quite a lot of money that season. It's a challenging situation they have got indeed. I mean, if you look at the last sort of 12 months as well, now, in the period 23 to 24, Rangers' net losses increased by 4.1 million to 17.2 million across that period. Now, revenue, in terms of actually revenue coming into the club, the revenue increased, but the loss also increased as well as costs increased. I mean, our revenue in terms of our revenue coming into the club was 83.8 million for 22-23. It increased to 88.3 million and then to 94.2 million for the last few years in terms of income and revenue, but that still represented a loss given all the expenditure going out of the club in terms of wages and other matters. It's not a very healthy picture. It's not a very healthy financial picture, and perhaps goes a little way to explain why Rangers can't splash the cash transfer-wise in terms of bringing in new players, spending money on wages, given these huge losses the club are running up. And like I said, they are relying on third-party investors to come in and obviously bankroll the club and keep it ticking over. Now, one of the areas that Borson has said that is absolutely vital for Rangers going forward, and I think it becomes a bit of a vicious circle on this one, is the whole situation over European football. I think at times as fans we lose sight a little bit of what European football should become for us. I think obviously that is because of that Europa League final run to Seville. Now, realistically, we all would love, pie in the sky first of all, we'd all love runs to UEFA finals, to any sort of Europa League final, Europa Conference League, Europa final. But in realistic terms, in modern footballing terms, that becomes increasingly impossible as the game becomes about money. You look at the squad values of teams you come up against. I mean, just taking Thursday, for example, a squad value of over 700 million in Tottenham Hotspur compared to an 80 million squad value in Rangers. Going into the game against Manchester United, you've got a squad worth even more there than the current Tottenham squad. In terms of the whole Europa League structure, you've got coming up against teams that have vastly superior budgets to Rangers. So realistically, the chances of actually getting to a UEFA final of some description are very small indeed. So we need to start to look upon Europe more realistically as a cash cow. It's not about finding a standard, finding a thing. It's about bringing money into the club in this short term, because that is what is required. In terms of winning trophies, domestically should be our bread and butter, where we are looking to compete. Obviously, is to win the league, to win the 2 cups in Scotland. That is where our trophies will come from. Your trophies realistically are not going to come from Europe. You've only got to look at the amount of finals that Rangers have sort of reached over the last 100 years to understand that. At the end of the day, Champions League qualification has become absolutely vital. Now, people, and I know some fans will say, well, but we get embarrassed in the Champions League. Well, unfortunately, that is the way it goes. They get embarrassed in the Champions League as well. But we've got to look upon it as this. The Europa League is small fish. It is not what Rangers need. Yes, you may enjoy your Rangers Thursday night. You may enjoy that under the lights in the Europa League, but that is not financially good for the club. It is financially bad for the club. We need to be looking at Champions League football. The Champions League is where the money is. You're looking at a situation where you win the Europa League, you earn, I think it's about 25-26 million pounds. You qualify from the group stages of the Champions League and get to the knockout phases. You can be looking to make twice that just in revenues in terms of TV money, UEFA revenues and matchday revenues. The money is so much bigger in the Champions League. So we need to be looking upon this as a situation where Champions League football becomes ever more important. Now, that, of course, would mean that we need to win the league in Scotland to, sort of at least give us a favourable qualifying round draw, which we're now obviously having to face given the Scottish coefficient reducing. And then obviously qualifying for the Champions League as well. So again, players, management of a sufficient standard to get there. But I think it really does put into perspective how important Europe is, taking this club forward to avoid losses, to avoid having this debt saddling this club. Obviously the other side of it is not just European football, but is actually getting a trading model up, and a trading model that works, that we can then bring in players for little amounts of cash and sell them on for big amounts of cash. Obviously the players you may be thinking of in the current squad are the likes of Conor Barron, Nicholas Raskin, Hiefte, Yanis Hadji, Hamza Igaman, for example. They are players, Mohamed Diamande, all that, you know, are brought in for relatively small amounts of money in European terms, big amounts of money in Scotland, but relatively small amounts of money in European terms, and then could hopefully be sold on for substantial profit in the future. This is, you know, all situations that does need to be got a handle on, and does need to be sorted as soon as is humanly possible. You know, the club cannot continue to rely on people coming in and financially bailing them out. They need to become self-sufficient in terms of European money and the trading model. You know, Rangers, to make money, unfortunately, are not going to get money from TV deals, are not going to get the money from sponsorship that English clubs get. The English clubs down to even the Championship level get substantially more in sponsorship and substantially more in TV revenue than Scottish clubs do. It is unfortunately the fact that the product on offer north of the border is not of the same standard, and therefore people don't want to invest in it. You know, as much as we love our club, we have to sort of admit that. And as much as, you know, I'd a million times more rather watch a Rangers game than any other game, even a Liverpool Man United game. You know, at the end of the day, you've got to look at it in terms of what TV companies are willing to buy, and TV companies know that for a Liverpool Man United game, or a Liverpool Arsenal game, or an Arsenal Tottenham game, or a Manchester United Manchester City game, or Man City Chelsea, they're going to get bigger TV audiences and bigger revenues than they will even for a Rangers Celtic game. That is unfortunately the world we live in these days. So we do need to look at, you know, those alternative revenue streams, and also that, like I said, European football, and getting this player trading model going. But we cannot go on losing money and making losses like we are now. This comes down, like I said, not just to European money, not just to transfer trading models, but comes down to a better, more efficiently run club. You know, and investors coming in, someone hopefully buying out the club, looking at how they can raise external revenue streams. There are ways to raise that money through sponsorship deals, through increased match day revenues, increased merchandise sales, through looking at, obviously as well, other online deals, online viewing to countries abroad. There is a plethora of ways to do that. Usage of apps, etc., to try and increase what comes into the club. Something needs to be looked at, and we need a new vision for that. The present board, I think, you know, with the likes of Douglas Park, Graham Park, John Bennett, I hope he gets well soon, all those people, I think, have singularly proved that they cannot run this club, that the way they are trying to run this club would be successful, say, in the early 80s and the 70s, but would not, so it doesn't certainly work in a modern footballing era. We do need a buyout. We absolutely 100% need a buyout. So, you know, the financial figures don't look great at the moment. And I think, you know, that kind of has to put it in perspective why we are unable to go out and sign players perhaps we want, why we are unable to go out and spend the money we want on players. You know, we have to live in a realistic world where we can't go and splash 10, 15, 20 million pounds in a transfer window, because we have not got that amount of money. You know, financially, we are in a difficult position from that aspect. And like I said, these losses are a concern. Right, guys, I'd love to know what you think. Let me know your views, comments, opinions down below. Obviously, please smash the sub, smash the like. I think, you know, as well, we've got to remember, it's our club, it's not their club. The board and I think the board need to remember that as well. You know, the Park family in particular need to remember this is our club, it's not their club. This is the fans' club. This club, and people can say, well, no, it's not. They own the club. Well, yeah, they may own the club, but they could own it. But what would they be without the fans? If the fans didn't turn up for games, if the fans didn't buy the merchandise, they wouldn't have a club. So at the end of the day, this is our club, not theirs. Okay, thank you for watching. As always, guys, on the way out, please smash the like, smash the sub, become a member, do all that great stuff, share, comment. Thank you for watching.